Be a minute slow.
Here she comes.
And here she
Code
comes.
Enforcement Board, come to order. Thank you. Roll call,
Oh, here
please,
she
Bobby.
is. Yes, sir.
Mr. Weeks,
Here.
Miss Wade,
Here.
Mrs. Dabbs is here. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. Robinson.
Here.
Miss Norfleet. Mr. Demasis.
Here.
Mrs. Taylor.
Here.
And Mrs. V. Casey. That completes the roll call, sir.
Thank you. Invocation, please.
Yes. Our Father in heaven, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us. This we pray. Amen.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Code Enforcement Hearing Procedure. Are you a guest, ma'am, or are you staff? Do we need to hear this? Do we need to hear this if nobody's there?
You don't need to do it if nobody's here.
Okay. All right, so we're done with that. Swearing in is immature.
Well, we gotta get the,
Swearing in, oh, I see.
Ready? Do you swear the testimony about to give the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
okay.
First case, new business.
First case is, stand by, let me get this squared away. First case is 18-800000235. The address is Rainville Park Road. It's an undeveloped parcel. The property owner is Pappas Civil Contractors, LLC. Going before the board, exhibit number 1 is all my photographs. Exhibit number 2, all my notices, to include the notice of violation and notice of hearings. Exhibit number 3 are my administrative docs, the case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records, and associated emails with this case. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of my notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violations and notice of hearing are sent, both return receipt requested as well as first class mail. And Mr. Chairman, would you please accept these into the record as evidence?
Bobby, will you accept this, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Some of you may be familiar with this case. Previously, it was a tree case that Shannon had handled. This is a large parcel that's on the northwest corner of Alternate 19 in Rainville, by Dixie Highway. Basically, the contractor, they got a change in their zoning, and they immediately cleared the property, and they cut down some like 900 trees or whatever. That was all dealt with as a separate case, but the case that's before the board here is they didn't submit any plans, no building permits, no site plans. Basically, they just started to do work. They cleared out, they took fill dirt and added it to the property to change the level of it. And you can see that in the photographs. If you can kind of imagine, this property was all covered with trees, and you can clearly see where it's been cleared, and they brought in asphalt millings. And they were going to begin doing a building project. Now, this started back in April of 2018. We've gone back and forth. We've had a lot of communications. Needless to say, it's a pretty substantial process, and what they're trying to build is a fairly big project. So they've been going through planning and zoning and things like that. The reason why we're here before the board is that's kind of stalled. They've been given the notes from planning and zoning from months ago, and they haven't done their end. So we're at a standstill. So because of that, we're kind of leaning a little bit on the code board, if you find them in violation, to basically set a deadline and get this project done or back or reversed. They can't put the trees back, but reversed. So that's kind of the back history with this. As I stated, the case started in April of 2018. Derek Silver from the building department and I went out with Shannon We conducted the initial inspection. He did about a 4-hour inspection. I went out towards the end of it. I could clearly see that there was construction being done. At that time, there was heavy equipment still on the property. And there were absolutely no permits applied for, no site plans. Nothing had been submitted to the city. The other added to this whole thing, there's an eagle's nest within 300 feet, and so they actually can't do any construction on part of it because of that. That was dealt with outside with FWC. That's their process, so it has nothing to do with the board, but just so you know, it adds a whole bunch more twists. So on April 12th, I mailed the first notice of violation. It was returned unclaimed. August 30th, the amended notice of violation, we cleaned up the violations a little bit and sent in an amended notice of violation. That one was returned to our office, signed, the green card was. Conducted a reinspection around September. Basically, that was kind of a paper inspection. It was to see what the status of permitting and things like that was. The permit was obtained, and on Shannon's case, the tree case, all of the fees and everything were paid. So at that point, her case was closed out for the tree violations. And we had separated those out because we knew that the building process was going to take a lot longer than dealing with the after-the-fact tree permits. So that's why there was 2 cases. So at that time, confirmed that there was no city building permits issued or anything like that for the property. So January 3rd, we let them have their time because, as I said, they were going through TRC, planning and zoning, dealing with all those city department issues with their site plans and who they had to contact, SwiftMud and things like that. January 3rd, we conducted a reinspection and we emailed the property owners. They did complete a site plan application. However, the technical review committee needed more information to move the process forward. So they gave them comments, and they're supposed to respond back and either fix those things or, those kind of things. So planning and zoning had not been contacted by the property owner with any further information, nor have they requested to be added to another TRC agenda. Basically, their site plan that was submitted was required to be completed within 90 days or else that site plan would expire per the city rules. So at that point in time, on January 3rd, we sent out a notice of hearing. We had originally scheduled this for a previous code board meeting, but we deferred that to this month. So on February 27th, we sent an email to the representative from Gulf Coast Consulting Incorporated, who's doing a lot of the site plan work and everything. And basically, this is an excerpt from the email that is in the file, but it says, I'm preparing for the March 14th code board, and I wanted to reach out to you regarding your email. As of today, there are no permit applications for this property, and this is February 27th. On October 8th of 2018, you were sent an email from Planning and Zoning stating that application was deferred pending resubmittal of the comments addressed. The site plan expires within 90 days. If not resubmitted with the required changes, the 90 days would make that expiration date January 8th. Well, we're already past that because this was February 27th. We gave them the city ordinances again, so it's almost like we had to start this whole process over, and some of it was like, oh, I didn't know it was city's problem. Well, we confirmed that the city was done. They had given it back. It was back in their lap, basically, to submit the site plans and do all these things. So the city's not the hang-up in this particular case, and that's why I'm bringing it before the board. My final inspection was on March 4th. There's still no permits completed, and the work hadn't been reversed, and there hadn't been any other work done. So we're kind of a paperwork standstill. Last thing on March 13th was that per patent planning and zoning, the site plan with changes was turned in on March 8th. So we went from February 27th, where we said they had work to do, turned in a new one on March 8th. They're now scheduled for TRC on April 4th, so next month. And if they're approved, they will be scheduled for the Planning and Zoning Board meeting on May 20th. So lastly, final approval will then be scheduled for either the May 28th or June 11th Board of Commission meeting. So after BOC approval, the permits will need to be obtained, work completed, and final building inspection signed off as approved. So as we sit right now, I'm asking the board to find them in violation of City Code 6-1, which adopts the Florida Building Code. Under that, City Code 210.00 requires the site plans to be submitted and approved. 64.00 deals with excavation and fill, and I'm not going to get into the definition. They brought in a large amount of dirt, moved around a large amount of dirt, and leveled off a lot of ground. So I think we're well past the what anybody would consider the common sense rule on excavation and fill as far as this property goes. And then finally, under 212.00 requires building permits to be submitted, and not only just submitted, but be completed. So one of the things I'm asking the board additionally is then the last part was 6-6, which requires the permit prerequisites to be met, which deals with your site plans and things like that. So what's before the board is 6-1, 6-6, 210.00, 64.00, and 212.00 of the city code. And then, like I said, I basically, we just want to get this project done and over with. We're pushing a year now. And that's all I have at this point.
So we need to add 6.1 to our list.
I'm sorry. I have 6.1 complied, and I think that's part of the amended. I changed it over to 6-6. So you can disregard 6-1. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
6-6, 210, 64, and 212.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Anybody else have any questions of Officer Gaffney? No questions, can we hear
I move based on testimony, evidence, and facts presented in law that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 6-6, 210.00, 64.00, and 212.00 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
roll call, discussion, please? Any discussion? Roll call, Bobby?
Mr. DeMossis?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs? Mrs. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes,
Please roll call.
thank you. Now we go to 4.
We need the second part of that motion for the
Second motion.
Wow.
compliance date and the
I
fine.
apologize.
Okay.
Do we want to ask the city?
Yes. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, based on everything that's going on, I'm looking at 6 months. That should give them enough time to clear through BOC and everything else and get it done. For the work they want to do, we can approach that as their work is commencing, but at least it gives them a firm deadline. I put on my notes October 1st, 2019. That actually gives them a couple extra weeks, and it just makes it an easy date. So if the board, and then as far as that goes, we don't have any prior violations with them other than the tree ones, which they took care of, which was fairly substantial. So I think $100 a day would be reasonable for this case.
Thank you. Second motion?
I move that the respondent shall have until October 1st of 2019 to bring the property into compliance with code sections 6-6, 210, 64, and 212, or suffer a fine of $100 per day for each day thereafter the respondents remain in violation of said code sections.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
We need a roll call.
Sorry, roll call.
Mr. DeMossis?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Please your roll call, sir.
Number 4?
Thank you. This is case number 18-800000854. The property address is 785 Dodecanese Boulevard, also known as Hella's Restaurant. The property owner is Bob Vivos Cartas Trust. Exhibit number 1 going before the board are all of my photographs that are included with this case. Exhibit number 2, my notices to include notice of violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3, administrative documents, case summary, property appraiser, tax collector records, and any associated emails. And exhibit number 4 is a copy of the posting and an affidavit of the posting and a copy of the sign. All my notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All my notice of violations and notice of hearings are sent, return receipt requested, as well as first class. And Mr. Chairman, please accept these into the record as evidence.
Please, Bobby, accept those into record.
Yes, sir, I will.
We have had contact with the owner on this case, both via email and phone calls. The case originally started on October 24th of 2018. I think I got a complaint from the Planning and Zoning. They had installed a new sign on the eastern side of the building. If you look at the photographs that are coming around, originally that sign, it's a little triangular sign, and it had a television screen in it. Well, there's a couple of things. They didn't get any permits for the electrical work. television screens aren't allowed under our city code. They were, at that time, sent a notice of violation on October 24th. On December 12th, they did apply for a permit. It's a building permit application number 18-3116. It was sent back for revisions primarily because they couldn't have the television. So if you look in the second photograph, they did get rid of the television and they just installed basically a plastic sign that was backlit. It does have electrical going to it. On February 22nd, I conducted a re-inspection. Noticed the sign was fully installed, as I stated, but the building permit had not been completed. So they applied for it, but the whole process also is final inspection and signing off on it. Then it's done, and it's, for lack of a better term, legal at that point in time. That's what's not occurred as of yet. It still has the electrical, I think, is still had to be submitted to the building department. So although they obtained a permit, it has not been approved, if you will. So on March 4th, I posted the property. At that time, I met with the manager, kind of explained to him what was going on with the sign and what needed to be done. On March 6th, we got a phone call from the contractor, Tony, from, At Your Service Electric, LLC. A permit was originally applied for about a month ago for a TV sign. They discovered it wasn't allowed, had to redo the sign. Another sign was installed without a permit. He's modifying the sign permit and hopes to have it done within the next few weeks. As of March 13th, the permit's still open and there's no final been done on it, and the permit has not been closed, so it's still in violation. And what's before the board is a violation of City Code 179.01, which requires all signs to be permitted and the permit obviously to be completed. And that's all I have at this time.
Any questions for Officer Gasson off the board? Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move, based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in the law, that at the time of the alleged violation, Section 179.01 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. DeMossis?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson? Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes. Second motion?
No recommendation.
Recommendation?
Based on the fact that they're pretty much done, they just have to do the paperwork. 30 days, $25 a day. There's no priors for this address.
Entertain a second motion now?
I'll make a motion. I move that the respondent shall have until April 15th, 2019, to bring the property into compliance with Code Section 179.01, or suffer a fine of $25 per day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. DeMossis?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes. Now we move on to number 5, 19-800000017, 1708 Fox Run Drive.
Thank you. As you stated, case number 19-800000017. The property address is 1708 Fox Run Drive. The McLaughlin Family Living Trust is listed as the property owner. My exhibits going before the board. The first one is the photographs for this case. Exhibit number 2, my notice of violations and notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3, administrative docs, case summary, property appraiser and tax collector records, and any associated emails. And exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All my notices were mailed to the property owner's record based on the Pinellas County property appraiser and tax collector databases. All my notice of violations and notice of hearing are sent both first class as well as return receipt requested. And Mr. Chairman, please accept the exhibits into the record as evidence.
Bobby, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We have had contact with the property owner at this address, mostly via phone calls. On January 11th, I conducted the initial inspection based on a neighbor complaint. I was actually conducting an inspection on a house to the west of it about a fence problem and a shed problem when this person complained about their fence and their shed. So I opened up a case for this address, and there were violations related to the fence on the west side of the property falling over in need of repair. There's also a large pile of tree debris and yard waste out in the front yard. There was a shed issue, which has been taken care of, but that was part of the original. On January 14th of this year, the notice of violation was mailed. We received no return mail from that mailing. On February 21st, the notice of hearing was mailed. Again, no return receipt from that mailing. On March 4th, I posted the property and an affidavit of the posting was signed. On March 11th, we did receive a phone call, and they stated that the property had been in compliance and was ready for a reinspection. So yesterday I went out, I conducted a reinspection, and I noticed that the fence and the shed are in compliance. There's still numerous bags of trash in front of the garage, and the sidewalks had not been cleared. So I asked the board to consider violations of two city codes, 8-40 and 8-52. Your notes may reflect a 36.03 and a 36.01, which are in compliance and not for the board to consider. So that's all I have at this time, Mr. Chairman.
This is a homesteaded property and the people live within the property.
I don't know its homestead status, but I know people live in it.
I was looking it up.
Any other questions for Dr. or Officer Gass? Have a motion, please? She's looking at the.
I'll make a motion.
Good.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented and law that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 8-40 and 8-52 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs were in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Demasis?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
I haven't even seen the evidence yet.
Oh,
Yes.
un momento, por favor.
Click on the button. Yes.
Yes. Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Ms. Dabbs?
Yes.
Mrs. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes. Second motion,
Recommendation.
recommendation?
30 days, and we have no priors with this owner, so $25 a day.
I move that the respondent shall have until April 15th to bring the property into compliance with code sections 8-40 and 8-52, or suffer a fine of $25 a day for each day thereafter the respondent remains in violation of said code sections.
I second.
Second.
Dabbs.
Roll call?
Mr. Demasis?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson? Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, we have no affidavits of non-compliance. We have affidavits of compliance. Number 6. 18-800000479 East Tarpon Avenue.
Need a motion to
I
accept.
move we accept the affidavit of non-compliance
No.
and award of compliance. I move we accept the affidavit of compliance and award the city $203 for prosecution costs.
Second.
First and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign?
Aye. No.
Okay,
Well, I want to make sure, was that an,
No, it was not a 9.
okay, so
Good.
it was a 7-0.
Very good, thank
Okay.
you.
number 7, 18-8000065 512 Wideview Avenue.
I move we accept the affidavit of compliance and award the city $150 in costs.
They don't have.
They don't have any.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Let me do it again. I
Yes.
move we accept the affidavit of compliance.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same sign opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, 18-800000692.
Move we accept the affidavit of compliance.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are done with affidavits of compliance. Old business, a request for foreclosure, 15-800000626, 1098 South Pinellas Ave.
All right, and I'm handling that. You've got in your package a memorandum that I had issued on March 11th. This is the property that's located on the corner of Mears and Pinellas Avenue. It's been before you a couple of different times. The last time the case was before you was for a petition for reconsideration of fine that the property owner had made. This board denied that fine reduction request. Since July of last year, I have been in negotiations with the property owner trying to get the case resolved. I've been unsuccessful in convincing the property owner to settle the matter. And so I'm asking for your authority to begin foreclosure process. This is a vacant lot. It is not owned by an individual. It is owned by a company. It is not homesteaded. And we need to begin the foreclosure process. The next step, just so you would know how it would work, is that I would notify the property owner that the lien needs to be paid, or the fine foreclosure action would begin. If I didn't get a response, I would bring it to the city commission. The board of commissioners then would get the same basic memo. I'd be asking for authority from them to foreclose. I would send the property owner another letter asking them to settle the matter. And if we couldn't get it settled, then I would actually file the foreclosure action. I'm hoping somewhere in the next 3 to 4 weeks, that will prompt the property owner to take a more serious look at the case so we can avoid the litigation. But if not, I need your permission, based upon your code, to bring the foreclosure action. The dollar amount of the fine, it was $71,200 in September of last year. Obviously, there's interest that needs to be added to that. The property is in compliance. It's just that the fine has not been paid. So we just need a motion to either authorize me to foreclose or deny that request.
I'll make a motion. I move that the Code Enforcement Board grant the authority to the city attorney to begin foreclosure procedures in this case.
Section.
We have a first and a second.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this the northwest corner or the southwest,
Northwest corner.
where all the trees are?
Northwest, yeah.
Yeah, north,
by Ace.
west, by Ace Hardware. And that's the one where the trees were leaning over Pinellas. They had to cut them down. The property had been cut back about 15 feet on the corner of Mears and Pinellas, but that's where it is.
Roll call, Bobby?
Mr. DeMasis?
Yes.
Mrs. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dabbs?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Motion
Thank you.
carried.
May I ask an aside question to Mr. Trapp? When the city, if it comes to it, that they take possession of this property?
No, what happens is that we would bring the foreclosure action, and there would be a judgment entered if we're successful, and the dollar amount that the city is owed, then the property would be put up for auction.
Okay.
And it's done electronically online, and anybody can bid on the property. The city would be bidding its judgment amount because it doesn't cost anything out of pocket. There is a high likelihood, because of the value of the property being under the dollar amount of the lien, that the city would be the successful bidder. And then if the city is the successful bidder, the commission will then give direction to the city manager as to what would be done with the property. Would it be deemed surplus? Would the city make a park out of it? I'm not really sure, but that's the process. More than likely, it would be foreclosed and sold.
Thank you.
Yep.
Approval of the minutes. We don't have minutes for February, do we, Bobby?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, thank you. Public comment. board staff comment, as well as the code enforcement participants. Do you have any comments at this time?
I move that the meeting for the code enforcement board be adjourned.
It is so.
All right.
Don't get used to this, just saying. Summertime's coming up.